Saturday night, 11:45 p.m. The kind of hour when Pulse Lounge stopped pretending to be a restaurant and became what it actually was, a place where money moved, favors were remembered, and the wrong kind of attention could cost you more than a bad tip. Amara had been on her feet since 5. She moved the way good servers move in a packed room. Not fast enough to look frantic, not slow enough to be invisible, just present, always exactly where the next problem was about to happen before the problem knew it was happening. 6 years of this. 6 years of reading rooms the way other people read faces. She knew when a table was about to ask for the check before they reached for their wallet. She knew when someone had ordered one drink too many and was about to become someone else's issue. She knew when a couple was fighting through their smiles. She was carrying a tray of drinks toward the VIP section when she heard it. Not a crash. Not a shout. Something smaller than both of those things and worse. A sound like a slap. Flat and sharp and wrong in every possible way. The kind of sound that cuts under music, under laughter, under everything, and lands directly in the part of your brain that has been trained since childhood to recognize danger. Amara turned. 2 tables away. A young woman pressed sideways into the booth, one hand flying up to her face, her eyes wide with something that was not surprise, because you don't look surprised at something that has happened to you before. You look braced. You look like someone who already knew exactly what was coming and was just waiting to find out when. Standing over her, a man. Tall, expensive suit. The particular confidence of someone who has never once in his life been told no and actually believed it. His hand was already rising again. Amara set the tray on the nearest flat surface without looking at it. She did not think about it. She did not weigh anything. There was no internal conversation, no moment of hesitation where she calculated the risk or considered the crowd or asked herself if this was her business. She just walked toward them, straight, steady, the way a person walks when the decision is already done. She stepped between them, put herself between his raised hand and the woman's face, and looked directly at him and said nothing. She didn't need to say anything. Her body said it. Her stillness said it. The fact that she was standing exactly where his hand was going, not moving, not flinching, that said everything. The man's hand stopped in the air. He looked at her. The entire lounge had gone quiet. Not the whole room, just the section around them, rippling outward table by table as people registered what they were seeing. A server in a black uniform standing between a man and the woman he had just hit. Her chin slightly raised. Her eyes not moving from his face. "Step back," Amara said. Her voice was low, calm. The kind of calm that does not come from not being afraid. It comes from having decided that afraid doesn't matter right now. The man stared at her. People were watching. He knew they were watching. The calculation moved across his face. The specific look of a man deciding how much of this he wants as a story that gets told tomorrow. He took a step back. He said something to her. Low. The kind of thing men say when they want you to know the conversation isn't over even though they are the one leaving. He straightened his cuffs with 2 slow, deliberate pulls, looked past Amara at the woman in the booth, looked back at Amara one more time, and walked toward the exit. Amara turned around. The woman in the booth was young, early 20s, dressed like she had come out for something that was supposed to be good, the kind of night that starts as a celebration of something small. Her cheek was red. Her eyes were full of water. She was working very hard not to let fall. "You okay?" Amara said. The woman nodded. Her jaw was tight. "Do you need anything?" She shook her head. Then, "Thank you." Barely a sound. More breath than word. Amara nodded once, picked up her tray, and went back to work. She didn't notice the man standing near the entrance. He had been there for less than 40 seconds. Long coat, completely still. The kind of stillness that doesn't come from being relaxed. It comes from being the type of person who learned a very long time ago that movement is only necessary when words have already failed. He had walked in just as it was ending, had seen enough. His eyes were on the server in the black uniform who had already returned to her section and was handing someone their drink like nothing had happened. Like she had not just stepped in front of a man twice her size on behalf of someone she had never met in her life. He watched her for a long moment. Then he walked across the lounge to the booth where his sister was sitting. The woman in the booth looked up at him. Her composure cracked immediately. Just for a second. Just enough. Hyun, she said. His name was Kong Hyun. And in certain parts of Seoul, and in the specific circles within Seoul, where favors were the actual currency and your name alone could change the temperature in a room, that name meant something very particular. He sat across from his sister. He did not ask her immediately. He looked at her face first, at the red mark, at what it meant about how long it had been there before it became visible. How long, he said. It was not a question the way most questions are questions. It was a door, an opening. The kind of person holds for you without knowing if you'll walk through it. His sister, her name was Kong Yedjin, 23 years old, the kind of beautiful that made people think they understood her before she'd said a word. Looked at the table. Tonight was the first time, she said. He looked at her. She looked up. In public, she added quietly. The room continued around them. Music, glasses, laughter. Hyun sat very still. We will talk, he said. Not here. He stood, extended his hand. She took it and stood up. At the edge of the booth, she stopped, looked back toward the section where the server in the black uniform was moving between tables, efficient, unhurried, already on to the next thing. She didn't know me, Yedjin said. I know, Hyun said. She didn't hesitate. He looked toward the server, said nothing, but he did not look away for a long moment. Then he placed his hand at the small of his sister's back and guided her toward the exit. Amara Osei was 27 years old, Ghanaian, born in Accra, raised in London until she was 16, then following her mother to Seoul after a second marriage that had not lasted, but had left them in a city that neither of them had originally planned to make a home. She had a degree in public health from university in London that Seoul's employment system did not fully know what to do with. She had a visa category that was narrower than her ambitions. She had a mother who worked in a medical clinic on the west side of the city and still called her every Sunday to ask when she was going to find something that suited her. She had worked at Pulse for 11 months. She was good at it, not because it was what she had imagined for herself, but because she had always been the kind of person who, when she found herself somewhere, decided to actually be there, to pay attention, to not do things halfway just because they weren't the original plan. She got home at 1:30 a.m. She showered, made tea, sat on her bed. She was not thinking about what she had done. The moment itself had already filed itself away somewhere in the category of things that are obvious enough that they do not require further examination. A man was about to hit a woman. She was close enough to stop it. She stopped it. That was the complete story as far as she was concerned. What she was actually thinking about was the rent increase that had come to mail 3 days ago, and whether the additional she would have to pull from her savings was going to affect her timeline. She had a timeline. 5 years in Seoul, she had told herself. Bill enough to go back to London or Accra with something. A plan. A foundation for the actual work. Community health outreach. Migrant worker support. The kind of work her degree had actually been designed for. The kind of work she had come here intending to do before the visa situation had made that considerably more complicated. 11 months into the 5 years. Plenty of time. She finished her tea, turned off the light, and went to sleep. She did not think about the man with the still eyes who had appeared at the entrance. She did not know that 3 miles away, in an office on the 14th floor of a building in Gangnam, that man was sitting across from a quiet, precise man named Beck, his most trusted person, and saying 6 words. Find out everything about the server. Beck had been with Kong Hyun for 9 years. He had seen him angry exactly twice. Both times had been quiet in a way that was worse than shouting. He had seen him generous in ways that never appeared on any public record. He had seen him sit in a room with men who were threatening him and look like he was waiting for them to finish so he could get back to something more interesting. He had never seen him ask about a server at a lounge. He wrote it down without comment. Everything, Hyun said again. Where she's from. What she came here to do. Why she's still doing what she's doing instead. Beck looked at him. Said nothing. Wrote it down. Stood up to go. Beck. He stopped. And find out what happened before I arrived, Hyun said. The full situation with Yedjin. I already started, Beck said. Hyun nodded once. Beck left. Hyun turned to the window. Seoul at midnight was its own kind of life. He had lived in this city his entire life, and he still found it interesting at this hour. The specific way it kept moving, kept being exactly itself, indifferent to whatever was happening in any individual room. He thought about his sister, about the red mark on her face, about the word she had used. Tonight was the first time in public, and what that word public was doing in the middle of that sentence. He thought about the server. She had not hesitated. That was the thing that kept returning to him. In a room full of people who had all seen and heard exactly the same thing she had, she was the only one who moved. Not because she was fearless. He had looked at her face. She knew exactly what she was stepping into. She moved anyway. And then, when it was over, when the man had left, she had picked up her tray and gone back to work. Like it was simply the only reasonable thing to do. He sat in his office until almost 3 in the morning. Not working, just sitting with the image of a woman in a black server's uniform standing between his sister's face and a man's raised hand like the most natural thing in the world. Kang Yedjin had been with Lee Juno for 7 months. She had met him at a gallery opening. He had been charming in the specific way of men who have practiced being charming, who know exactly when to be funny, exactly when to be attentive, exactly when to seem just slightly vulnerable in a way that made you feel trusted. He had been patient with her in the beginning, patient and present and interested in everything she said. It had taken her 4 months to understand that the patience was not patience. It was management. He was learning her, learning what made her pull away, what made her come back, what kind of apology she would accept, what kind of story she would believe. He had been studying her the way someone studies a lock, methodically, with a specific purpose. The first time he heard her, he cried about it afterward, held her and shook and told her he didn't recognize himself, told her it would never happen again. She had believed every word. She had held him back and told him it was okay. It was not okay. She knew that. But the version of events he had handed her, where she had pushed him too far, where he had lost control for just one moment, where the fault was a shared thing, a system failure, not a choice, that version was easier to live inside of than the alternative. The alternative was that she had been wrong about him from the beginning. She was not ready to be that wrong. So she stayed, and she adjusted. She became smaller, more careful, more precise about what she said and when she said it. She learned the signs, the particular set of his jaw, the way he went quiet when he was building toward something. She started managing her own behavior around his reactions, like she was responsible for both of them. She did not tell Hyun. She told herself this was because she was protecting Juno, protecting him from the consequences of what Hyun would do when he found out. But in the part of herself she didn't look at too directly, she knew the real reason. She was protecting herself from knowing what it meant that she had stayed, from having to say it out loud to her brother, the person who knew her better than anyone, and watch his face while she said it. It had been building for months. Small escalations. Things that were deniable in isolation, undeniable in sequence. And then a restaurant, a Saturday night, a full room of people, and Juno, in front of all of them, raising his hand to her face. She had not seen it coming fast enough to stop it. What she had not expected, what none of them had expected, was the server. The server who appeared from nowhere, set herself between them with the calm certainty of someone who had already made the decision and was simply executing it, who had looked at Juno without a single trace of backing down, who, when it was over, had turned to Yedjin and asked quietly, simply, if she was okay, and then gone back to work. Like a person who steps in front of raised hands for strangers is just who she is. Like it required no particular recognition. Yedjin sat in the car on the way to her brother's office and thought about that. About how she had spent 3 months carefully not asking anyone for help. And in 30 seconds, a stranger had given it to her without being asked. Amara arrived at work the following Monday to find her manager, Soo-jin, waiting for her near the staff entrance with the specific expression of a woman who has received information she would rather not have and is trying to decide what to do with it. "Mr. Kang wants to see you," Soo-jin said. Amara looked at her. "Okay." "Before you go in," Soo-jin said, and then stopped. "What?" Soo-jin pressed her lips together. "Just listen more than you talk." "Okay." Amara went to the back office. Mr. Kang had owned Pulse for 16 years and was the kind of man who measured everything in terms of problems. How many he had, how many were coming, how many he could afford. He was sitting behind his desk when she entered, and he looked like a man who had not fully slept. "Saturday night," he said. "Yes," Amara said. "The man you intervened with." He paused. "Do you know who he was?" "No," she said. Mr. Kong folded his hands on the desk. "His name is Lee Juno. He has connections I am not going to describe in detail. What I need you to understand is that his being removed from this venue by the situation you created is something that has the potential to become a problem for this establishment." Amara looked at him steadily. "He struck a customer," she said. "I am aware of what he did." "In your lounge," she said. "In front of your other customers." "Amara, if you are about to tell me that I should have allowed that to continue," she said, and her voice was very calm, "then I need you to finish that sentence so I know exactly where we stand." Mr. Kong was quiet for a moment. He looked at his desk, then out the window, then back at her. "I'm not telling you that," he said, and he sounded tired when he said it. Not angry, tired. "I'm telling you to be careful. There may be a tension on you that wasn't there before." Amara nodded once. "I appreciate you telling me." She stood up. "Is that everything?" He looked at her. "Yes." She tied her apron at the door and went out to the floor and started her shift. Lee Juno spent 4 days deciding nothing was going to happen. He was a practical man. He understood how the world worked, and specifically, he understood his own position in it, the names he had access to, the relationships that functioned as insurance. He told himself that what had happened in the lounge had been an embarrassment, yes, and an inconvenience, but not a beginning of anything. Kong Hyun was a rational person. Rational people understood that certain actions created problems that weren't worth the energy. He had almost convinced himself by the 4th day. On the 5th day, Yedjin came to his apartment. He saw her on the intercom camera, alone. He let her in. She walked past him without speaking and stood in the middle of his living room. He started to say something. Her hand came across his face. Clean, hard, everything that 3 months had been collecting into a single point of release. His head turned with it. His hand came up immediately. The reflex, the muscle memory, the unconscious certainty of a man who has always been the one with the final word. And stopped, because 3 men had stepped through the apartment door behind her. Not running, not aggressive, just there, standing at each point of the room like they had been there the entire time, and he had simply not noticed until now. He looked at them. He looked at Yedjin. She looked back at him without flinching, without looking away, with the specific steadiness of someone who has stopped managing themselves around another person's reactions and is simply standing in their own skin again. "Sit," she said. He sat. She stood in front of him, and she spoke. Not loudly, not with tears, just clearly, precisely, with the particular control of a person who has rehearsed nothing but has been building toward this for a very long time. "I told myself," she said, after the first time, "that it was a moment, that you had been pushed too far, that stress had done something to you that wasn't really you, that I was partially responsible for letting things escalate." She paused. "I told myself that story 6 different ways until I believed it." He said nothing. After the second time, she said, "I stopped believing the story, but I had already started changing. I had started measuring every conversation before I had it, tracking your moods from the second you walked in, making myself smaller in every room we were in together, quieter, more careful, less." She looked at him directly. "I did that, not because you asked me to, because it had become the thing I did to survive being near you." His jaw tightened. "I stopped seeing my friends properly," she said. "I stopped telling my brother things. I buried every subject that might set you off, and I called that management, and I told myself that was love." She paused. "It was not love. It was training. You trained me, and I was so ashamed of how well it had worked that I kept the entire thing to myself for 3 months." The room was very still. And then, she said, "You hit me in a public room, in front of people who knew my family's name, in front of my brother's city." She reached in her bag, pulled out a document, set it on the coffee table. "I filed a formal complaint this morning," she said, "with documentation, with dates, with the account I wrote the morning after each incident, because some part of me knew that eventually I would need it." She straightened. "If you contact me, I will know. If you appear anywhere near me or anyone connected to me," She looked at the three men standing around the room. There will not be a conversation. She picked up her bag. You spent months making me afraid of you, she said. I needed you to understand what that feels like. She looked at him one final time. I hope you do. She walked out. The three men followed. The door closed. Lee Juno sat alone in his apartment with the document on the table and the mark of his ex-girlfriend's hand still reading on his face, and understood, very quietly and very completely, that he had made an enormous and irreversible mistake. Yedjin went directly to her brother's building. She did not call ahead. She walked through the lobby and took the elevator to the 14th floor and pushed open the door to his office and walked in. Hyun looked up from his desk. He took one look at her face, at her eyes, still wet, but not from grief, from something that was the opposite of grief, from the specific release of something that has been held too long. And he stood up. She crossed the room and walked into him the way you walk into someone when you have been carrying something alone for so long that putting it down feels like falling. He held her. Neither of them spoke for a while. I should have told you, she said finally, into his shoulder. Yes, he said simply. I was protecting him. I know. She pulled back, wiped her face with the back of her hand. I was protecting myself too, she said, from knowing what it meant that I stayed. He looked at his sister, at the bruise that had settled into its full color now. At 23 years of a person he had watched become exactly who she was, standing in front of him with her eyes clear and her chin up, even while she was still shaking. It means you are a person, he said. It means you believed someone who was specifically trying to be believed. That is not weakness. She pressed her lips together. It means, he said, that you got out. She exhaled, long, slow, the kind of breath you take when you have been breathing shallowly for months without realizing it. There was a woman, she said. She looked at him. The server. Nardos, he said, then corrected himself. Amara. She didn't know me, Yedjin said. She had nothing to gain. She just moved. She shook her head slowly. She stepped in front of him like it was the only available option. Like, of course. Like what else would a person do? She looked at her brother. I keep thinking about that. He said nothing. Don't let her disappear, Yedjin said quietly. Something moved across his face. Small and specific and not entirely controlled. Go home, he said. Rest. She picked up her bag. At the door she stopped. Turn back. Appa, she said. He looked at her. Thank you, she said, for always being the place I could come back to, even when I didn't come. Her voice broke on the last word just slightly, even when I should have come months ago. He held her gaze for a long moment. Always, he said. Just that. One word. She left. He stood in his office alone, in the quiet, and did not move for a very long time. Beck's report came back 2 days later. Hyun read it at his desk. Then read it again. Amara Osei, 27, Ghanaian British. Public health degree, London. In Seoul, 3 years on employment visa category that limited her to a narrow list of approved work roles. Currently 11 months into a position at Pulse Lounge that she had taken as a temporary measure while she navigated the qualification recognition process. She had not stopped navigating. She was still actively pursuing the correct visa category to work in her actual field. She had submitted 2 separate applications in the past 18 months, both returned on technicalities. She had come to Seoul to do specific work. She had been doing a different thing for 3 years while waiting for a door to open. Hyun set the report down. He sat with it for a moment. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. He went to Pulse on a Wednesday afternoon. Off hours. The lounge half empty. Staff moving between sections doing setup. Amara was wiping down the bar when he walked in. She saw him immediately. Did not stop wiping. He sat at the bar. She came over. We're not open for another 2 hours, she said. I know, he said. She looked at him. Then how is she? He looked at her for a moment. Better, he said. She wanted me to tell you. He stopped. She'll tell you herself. He paused. She is safe. Amara nodded. Went back to the bar cloth. I read your file, he said. She stopped. Turned around slowly. My file. Your qualifications, he said. Your visa situation. What you came to this city to do. She looked at him with the specific expression of a person processing the gap between a violation and the fact that they cannot entirely be angry about the outcome of it. You had no right, she said. No, he said. I didn't. He did not look away from her face. I needed to understand who steps in front of a raised hand for a stranger and then goes back to work like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, she said. I know, he said. That's exactly what I needed to understand. She held his gaze. Did not say anything. He reached inside his jacket. Not a business card. A document, folded once. He placed it on the bar between them. She looked at it. Did not touch it. What is this? A position, he said, with a nonprofit I fund. Community health outreach and legal support services for migrant workers. Documentation support, employer dispute resolution, health advocacy. He paused. The kind of work a public health degree from London is actually designed to do. She looked at the document, then at him, then at the document again. Why, she said. Because you have been trying to do the right work in this city for 3 years, he said, while a visa category has been the thing standing between you and it. And I am in a position to change that. He paused. So I am changing it. I don't want to owe anyone anything, she said carefully. You don't owe me anything, he said. You already did the thing that would have made us even before you knew there was anything to be even for. He looked at her directly. This is not a transaction. This is a door. One that should have been open already. She looked at the document. He stood. Read it, he said. That's all I'm asking. He turned to go. Then, Amara. She looked at him. Thank you, he said. For my sister. And he left before she could respond. She read the document that night. 3 times. It was not a gesture. It was a real organization. She looked it up, found its registration, found its public-facing reports, found the names of the people running it. Active caseload. Permanent staff. A track record of actual impact. The position was real. The salary was real. The visa sponsorship pathway attached to it was real. She sat on her bed with the document in her lap for a long time. She had told herself for 3 years that she was waiting for a door. She had kept her timeline. She had kept doing the work in front of her while waiting for the work she had actually come for. She had not given up on the original plan. She had just been patient about it in the way you are patient about things when the alternative is despair. This was the door. She messaged him the next morning. I read it. I accept. His reply came 3 minutes later. Start Monday. She started Monday. The organization was called Hannahbridge. It operated out of a modest office in Mapo District, 3 floors up, windows that looked out over a side street where a pojamika set up every evening. 12 staff. Caseload of 30-something active files when she arrived. By the end of her first week, she had taken on 8 of them. The work was exactly what she had come sold to do. Not a version of it, not adjacent to it, the actual thing. Women who had come to Korea on employment visas and found their employers using the visa as leverage. Women who had been underpaid for months and told that if they complained, their papers would be an issue. Women who were living in employer-provided housing that was being counted against their wages in ways that were not in their contracts. Women who had been injured at work and been persuaded not to file because of what it might mean for their status. Women who needed someone to sit across from them, understand exactly what they were navigating, and say clearly, you have rights. Here is what they are. Here is what we're going to do about it. Amara was that person. Every day, multiple times a day, she was exactly that person. And she threw herself into it with the particular intensity of someone who has been waiting to do this for long enough that now that the door is open, she's going to walk through it as fully as possible and not waste a single hour. She was good at it. Not just technically, she was good with people in the specific way that cannot be taught. She knew when to be direct and when to give someone space. She knew when a woman sitting across from her was saying one thing and meaning something harder to say. She knew how to make a room feel safe without performing safety. She was 3 weeks in when she noticed that Kong Hyun was appearing. Not constantly, not intrusively, just periodically, in meetings where he was technically the funding stakeholder in the office at the end of a day when he was reviewing reports. He asked specific questions about cases in ways that made clear he had read the details rather than been briefed on a summary. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, it was usually precise, a question that opened something up, a connection she hadn't seen yet, an angle worth considering. She noticed. She told herself she wasn't particularly noticing. She noticed anyway, and specifically, and with more attention than she was entirely comfortable with. One evening, they were the last two people in the office. She was finishing a case summary at one end of the long work table. He was reading something at the other end. Outside, the street was doing its usual Friday evening thing. The pajama man setting up, the sound of a bus going past. She did not look up when she spoke. "Why do you actually fund this?" she said. "Not how long have you funded it, or what made you interested in this space. Why? The actual why." He looked up. She was still looking at her report. He set down what he was reading. "My mother," he said. She looked up. "She came to Seoul from a different situation than most people assume about my family," he said. "Early days. Not much. No one who knew what she needed or how to help her get it." He looked at the table. She figured it out. She always figured things out. But it cost her more than it should have. More than it needed to. Amara was quiet. "This is the thing I can do," he said. "Make it cost less for the next person." She looked at him across the work table. At this man who moved through every room like he had already decided exactly how everything was going to go. Who people moved away from without realizing they were doing it. Who had, in a lounge full of people watching him to see what he would do next, said nothing, and bowed to a server in a black uniform like that was the only reasonable response to what she had done, and was now sitting across from her in a quiet office talking about his mother. She opened her mouth to say something. The office door opened. Yedjin walked in. She stopped in the doorway, looked at Amara, looked at her brother, looked at the particular quality of the silence between them, the kind that has been building for a while and knows it. She set a takeout bag on the near surface. Then she walked to Amara first, stood in front of her. "I have been meaning to come sooner," she said. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were bright. I kept starting the message and not knowing how to finish it because she stopped. Started again. I spent 3 months telling myself that what was happening was manageable, that I was handling it, that it wasn't the kind of thing you needed to tell anyone about. She took a breath, and then I watched a stranger step in front of a raised hand in 30 seconds without being asked, without knowing anything about me, without calculating what it might cost her. Amara was very still. "You didn't give me my courage back," Yedjin said. "I had it. I just needed someone to show me what using it looked like." She paused. "You showed me." Her voice was very quiet. "Thank you." Amara held her gaze. Said nothing because some things don't need a response. They need to be received. She received it. Yedjin let a moment pass. Then she turned to her brother. He was watching her with the specific attention of a man who is prepared for whatever this is going to be. "You," she said. He went still. "You have been my door," she said, "my entire life. Every time, without ever making me feel like a problem for needing it." She looked at him steadily. "I knew. Even when I couldn't tell you, I knew the door was there. That was enough to keep me from going completely under. Just knowing it was there." Her eyes were bright. "Thank you for being the kind of person she would step in front of a raised hand for." A pause. "Both of you deserve the other one." She looked at them both. One more time, that small knowing expression of a younger sibling who has just seen something that the two people in front of her have not yet admitted to themselves. "The food is from the corner," she said simply. "Don't let it go cold." She walked out. The door closed behind her. The office was quiet. Amara looked at the takeout bag. Looked at him. He was looking at her. She stood up and walked to the bag and began setting the containers out on the table and said, "You should know your sister is an extremely effective person." He made a sound that was, for him, a laugh. "I know," he said. She didn't hesitate either, Amara said. "Runs in the family, apparently." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "She's right," he said. He paused. Chose the words with the care of someone who does not say uncertain things easily. That there are things worth not walking away from. Amara looked at him. "I'm not walking away from anything," she said. The city outside the window kept moving, kept being exactly itself. They ate. They talked. The work sat around them the way good work does. Real, ongoing, necessary. And neither of them mentioned it for the rest of the evening, and both of them carried it in the specific way of people who have found the work they were supposed to be doing and intend to keep doing it. In the months that followed, 31 women came through Hannah Bridges' doors with cases Amara handled personally. 11 employer disputes settled in the workers' favor. For visa situations resolved that had previously been deemed unresolvable. 6 women connected to housing support after being displaced from employer-provided accommodation. 3 women who came in for one thing and stayed to be trained as peer advocates for the next woman who came through the door after them. The work expanded because the need was there and the need did not stop. Amara hired a second outreach coordinator, then a third. She wrote a proposal that was approved for a mobile service component that reached workers who could not come to the office. She testified at a district-level hearing on migrant employment conditions and said exactly what she had seen and what it required. She was not loud about any of it. She was simply, consistently, completely present, the same way she had been present in a lounge on a Saturday night when a sound cut through the music, and she turned and moved toward it. Kang Hyun was in and out of her life in ways that were not management and were not complicated and were, after a while, simply the shape of how things were. Yedjin started volunteering at Hannah Bridge on Thursday afternoons. She was, it turned out, extremely good at the intake conversations, the particular skill of sitting across from someone who is afraid to tell the whole story and making them feel safe enough to tell it. She said this was because someone had once made her feel that way. She said it once, and did not need to explain who she meant. A year after the night at Pulse Lounge, Amara was closing up the Hannah Bridge office late on a Friday. The last of the staff had gone home. She was at her desk finishing notes on a case that had finally moved in the right direction after 6 weeks of difficult conversations with an employer who had not wanted to cooperate. She heard the office door. She did not look up immediately. "We're closed," she said. "I know," he said. She looked up. Hyun was leaning against the doorframe with the particular ease of a man who has somewhere to be and has decided this is where he would rather be instead. "Long day," she said. "Long week," he said. She closed her laptop. "The food truck on the corner stays open until 10, she said. "I know," he said. She stood up, got her jacket, walked toward the door. He held it open. She went through. Outside, the street was doing its usual Friday thing. The city moving, lit exactly itself. "Yedjin says you testified again last week," he said. "I did. How did it go?" "The way these things go," she said. "Slow. Then all at once." He nodded. They walked. Comfortable, not performing anything, 2 people in the particular easy company of people who have been through enough together that they do not need to fill the space. After a moment, Amara. She looked at him. "I saw you," he said, from the door of that lounge. 30 seconds, the end of it. You putting yourself between him and her, and then going back to work like, he paused. "Like, of course. Like what else?" She waited. "I didn't know yet who you were," he said. "I didn't know your name, or what you had come here to do, or any of it. I just," he stopped again, "chose. I knew that whoever you were, I wanted to understand it. And now," she said. He looked at her. "And now," he said, "I do." She held his gaze. The food truck was ahead of them, warm light, the smell of something good. "Come on then," she said simply, and walked toward it. He walked with her. The city moved around them, indifferent lit ongoing, exactly itself.